On the morning of April 22, 2016, law enforcement in Pike County, Ohio, told residents to stay inside and lock their doors. In a community where most people never lock their doors at all, that was not a routine announcement. 8 people had been killed across 4 locations in a single night. The people responsible were neighbors. Pike County, Ohio sits in the southern part of the state, tucked into a stretch of the Appalachian country where family is the foundation everything else is built on. People know their neighbors' parents, which truck you drive, where you like to fish on the weekends. Generations of families live close enough to each other that the lines between households blur naturally over time. The Rhodens were one of those families. Christopher Rhoden Sr. was 40 years old, a laborer who owned several properties in Sunfish Township and spent summers working at Big Bear Lake Family Resort. His brother Kenneth, 44, ran utility and lumber jobs across the county. Their cousin Gary, 38, had roots in Kentucky tobacco farming before putting down roots in Ohio. These were men defined by physical work and deep local connection, their lives anchored to demolition derbies, hunting seasons, and the slow rhythms of agricultural community. The younger generation of Rhodens was just beginning to find their footing. Frankie Rhoden, 20, was a welder who lived for hunting and fishing and the local demolition derby, where his Ford Crown Victoria was a beloved regular entry. He was engaged to Hannah Gilley, also 20, who had plans to open a daycare. Hannah Mae Rhoden, 19, was a certified nursing assistant and a mother of 2, building a life with real intention. Her mother was Dana, 37, working at Hillside Skilled Nursing and Rehabilitation, known throughout her unit for regularly bringing food for her colleagues for no other reason than she wanted people to feel cared for. Christopher Jr. was 16, a freshman at Piketon High School, still trying to figure out what version of all of this he was going to look like. These were the people at the center of this story, so hold that in your mind. About 15 miles away, along the same web of rural roads and the same county routes that the Rhodens traveled every week, the Wagner family had been building something very different for a long time. Billy Wagner III and his wife Angela raised 2 sons, George and Jake, inside a household built around criminal enterprise from the ground up. Billy began incorporating his boys into that enterprise at around age 8. His signature training method was road trip games where he paid each son $1 for every law enforcement officer they spotted along the way. Cash payments starting in elementary school for identifying and tracking police officers. But by their early teens, the brothers were running theft operations alongside their father, stealing diesel fuel from truck stops using specialized hoses and pumps. George later recalled that they specifically targeted diesel because gasoline explodes and diesel does not. These were children performing criminal risk calculations before they were old enough to get a learner's permit. Angela Wagner handled the household's internal structure and social control. She managed chores and laundry methods and dictated who her sons were permitted to associate with. She committed arson for insurance profit as well. She ran a fraudulent dog breeding operation, selling mixed-breed dogs as purebreds, which is maybe the most Angela Warner thing Angela Warner ever did. She also routinely accessed the social media accounts of women dating her sons, monitoring their loyalty and intentions with the dedication that most people reserve for things they genuinely love. That was the standard operating procedure around the Wagner home. She had built a personal surveillance system around her sons' relationships. This is the household Jake Wagner came from when he began a relationship with Hannah Mae Rhoden. Jake was 20, Hannah Mae was 13. The relationship eventually produced a daughter named Sophia, and when it ended, Sophia became the center of an obsession the Wagner family would spend years translating into something catastrophic. Investigators and prosecutors described the family as operating under what they call a 100% Wagner ideology. The belief was that Sophia belonged entirely to the Wagner bloodline, and shared parenting represented a permanent, unacceptable threat. Billy Wagner was the first to articulate what eliminating that threat actually required. removing Hannah Mae alone would be insufficient. If the rest of the Rhoden family survived, there would be legal action, potential retaliation, and a sustained connection between Sophia and the people the Wagners have classified as adversaries. In Billy's logic, everyone with a living claim to Sophia had to be gone. In late 2015, Hannah Mae sent a Facebook message to a friend. She wrote that she would never sign custody papers and that the Wagners would have to, quote, kill me first. Angela Wagner, who had been reading Hannah Mae's private messages as a matter of regular practice, saw that note. For a family that had been already discussing mass murder as a practical solution to a custody dispute, those words served as kind of a confirmation. Planning accelerated. The 4 months leading up to April 2016 looked like military preparation. The Wagners conducted what they called missions and drills in the woods near their properties, practicing movement and coordination. They acquired a truck specifically for the night of the killings, planning to sell it immediately afterward. They built homemade silencers. They purchased phone jamming devices to cut cell signals at each crime scene, preventing anyone from calling for help. They attached brass catchers to their firearms so no shell casings would be left on the ground. In the week before the murders, Jake and George dyed their hair darker. The inspiration was a movie called The Boondock Saints. It's a 1999 film about two brothers who carry out what they frame as righteous, family-driven justice against people they decided deserved to die. Jake had developed a deep attachment to the film and its characters. They were constructing an internal story in which everything they were about to do was principled and necessary. The hair was kind of a costume. The movie was the script they'd handed themselves. On the night of April 21st into the early morning hours of April 22nd, Billy, George, and Jake moved through 4 locations while Angela remained home to coordinate. At the first trailer on Union Hill Road, Jake testified that George hesitated when the moment arrived. Jake picked up his brother's gun. Christopher Sr. and Gary Rhoden were killed. The group moved to the second trailer on the same road, where Dana, Hannah Mae, and Christopher Jr. were sleeping. Hannah Mae's 4-day-old infant was found beside her body, left alive. Dana and Christopher Jr. were shot in their beds. At the third trailer, Frankie Rhoden and Hannah Gilley were killed in their bedroom. Their 6-month-old baby was found between them, physically unharmed. Kenneth Rhoden was miles away at a camper on Left Fork Road, and he was shot once in the head. 8 people across 4 locations in a single night, and 3 children left alive. The pattern of who was spared told investigators something very specific about what the Wagners believed they were accomplishing. Law enforcement arrived the morning of April 22nd and advised residents to stay indoors and lock their doors. In a community where people routinely left them unlocked, that announcement landed differently than any other public routine safety message. Early investigative theory pointed toward a drug cartel involvement. The Rhodens had marijuana operations and cockfighting on some of their properties, and the coordination across 4 separate crime scenes suggested something large and external. 2 full years of investigation would close in on something much closer to home. The Wagners initially cooperated, providing DNA samples and sitting for multiple interviews with the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation. In June 2017, the family relocated to Alaska, citing harassment and lingering rumors. They joined a Baptist church there and were described by neighbors as quiet and entirely ordinary. Investigators followed. Wiretaps were placed in the family's vehicles, and recorded conversations indicated the Wagners were actively working to manage their history. A homemade silencer was recovered from the bottom of a well on a property that they had previously owned in Ohio. In November 2018, all 4 members of the Wagner family were arrested. Jake Wagner essentially said, "You got me. I'm guilty." April 22nd, 2021, exactly 5 years after the murders, he admitted to personally shooting 5 of the 8 victims. George, his brother, stood trial, convicted on all counts, and received 8 consecutive life sentences, plus 121 additional years. Angela, their mother, pled guilty to conspiracy charges and got 30 years. Billy Wagner's trial, as of the latest information, was still pending. At the January 2025 sentencing hearings, one of the victims' family members called Jake the spawn of Satan. Jake's own statement to the court described his arrest as Jesus answering his prayer for guidance toward a straight and narrow path. Pike County defines itself through the idea that family is what you protect and what protects you. It's the organizing principle of that region. The Wagners understood that, but instead of playing protector, they played predator. Thanks for listening to 10 Minute Murder, bingeable true crime stories. I'm Joe, I'm the host, and here's an email. Subject, slightly embarrassing habit. Hi, Joe. I listen to your show while I'm folding laundry, and now I've accidentally trained myself to associate clean towels with homicide. I pulled a warm load out of the dryer the other day and immediately thought, I should put on Joe. Brains are weird. Stephanie in Wisconsin, and the city is, I don't want to mess it up, Eau Claire. I'm going to attempt it. Is it Eau Claire? It's kind of like that French dip sub thing where they've got the au jus. Maybe. I don't know. It's the first I'm hearing of that city in Wisconsin. I'm sure it's great. And Stephanie, yeah, that is kind of weird. But, people develop habits. I've got some strange habits that I won't discuss here. But yeah, I get it. Thank you for the email. Hey, if you're a brand new listener to this podcast, make sure you hit subscribe right now. You can contact me if you want to, 10minutemurder.com. If you're enjoying the podcast, make sure you tell your friends and your family all about 10 Minute Murder. And that's going to do it. That's your episode for today. Thanks again for listening to 10 Minute Murder. See you next time.